Hey guys, hopefully everybody's safe. Hopefully nobody's came down with the coronavirus. Strange times, that's all I can tell you. We're going to try and finish up, and it's kind of a bummer because for those of you getting into the field, or maybe just some of you like helicopter pilots that get drunk and you're driving, these are things good to know on what you're going to be tested on. That was for Andrew. Anyway, they're difficult to prosecute. They're difficult to prosecute because, like I told you before, if the attorney is good, the defense attorney, they're going to go back to the very beginning, phase one, which we talked about already. And if they can find that you did a violation in phase one, it doesn't matter how drunk they were, you lose the case. If you did everything right in phase one, but you screwed up in phase two, again, doesn't matter how drunk they were, you're going to lose the case because the way the courts look at it is you have to do your job in every phase. If you do something wrong, and you're going to lose the case. They're difficult. But it doesn't mean that we're not supposed to make arrests. Of course we are. People that drive under the influence on the roadways kill people, so many. We just have to be smart, and we have to do our job. Having said that, a lot of emails are coming in worried about a final. Your final, relax, is going to be a quiz. Short quiz based on DUIs. So what I want you to do now is go back and look at my lectures that I've done on phase 1, 2, and 3. Take notes. I'm going to allow you to use notes. I'll put a quiz final on Canvas. It's timed, but you'll be allowed to use your notes. So I expect everyone to get 100. If you don't watch these videos, you're not going to get 100, folks, because it's not in any book. This is something that I'm teaching you that comes from an academy. If you go back and you watch the lectures, take notes, the final will be a piece of cake. Okay, so let's take up where we left off. We talked about last time. Remember, there's 3 times in a DUI. Phase 1. In phase 1 we talked about, that's that vehicle in motion. You have to justify why you stopped the car. The only exception to that is if somebody calls in a drunk driver. You can then pull that vehicle over just because someone called them in as a possible drunk driver. Otherwise, go back, look at your notes. Make sure you understand these are the reasons that we stop people when we suspect them of being under the influence. Phase 2 we're going to talk about today in today's lecture. This is what we call our personal contact. This means you've stopped the vehicle and now you're going up to the window to make contact with the driver. Next lecture we're going to talk about phase 3, which is when you have the person exit the vehicle. And there's 3 things I want you to understand when you look down here on my notes. And we'll get to this next time. When we get to phase 3 and we have somebody exit the vehicle, this is where you're going to start seeing these terms, the SFST. That's the Standardized Field Sobriety Test. That's those tests you see all over TV. We walk 9 steps, we turn around, we touch our nose, all these crazy ass things that we do to see whether or not you are drunk or something in your system. And when I say that, that's what DRE means down at the bottom, a drug recognition expert. Many people are driving poorly on the roadway, not because of alcohol, but some other opioid or some other kind of, whether it's marijuana, whether it's heroin. So a DRE again is further training to understand, well, maybe it's not alcohol, it might be something else. And then HGN. HGN is extremely important. I'm telling you that the first thing you should do when you get out of an academy is go get HGN certified. It makes your job in doing DUI arrest so much easier. HGN is horizontal gaze nystagmus. This is when we watch your eyes and see if they're bouncing. HGN is another complete different training. It's close to 80 hours of training. Has nothing to do with your walking 9 steps, holding 1 foot up, all these tests. You don't get to look at someone's eyes until you've been HGN certified. But once you have, you'll see how much easier it is to do everything else. We'll come back to that when we do the next lecture. Today we're going to talk about phase 2, personal contact. Personal contact, remember, you've pulled a vehicle over. You've pulled it over for whatever reason that you've got. This person clearly has got diminished driving behavior. They're not driving good. They're driving like shit. Okay, you pulled them over. As you walk up to the car, be safe. I'm hoping all your academies will teach you to be safe. And you're going to have all kinds of crazy things happen on DUIs. Remember, if you're right and they are drunk, they're going to be wanting to get out of the car. They're going to be doing all kinds of crazy things. But if they stay inside the car, remember this, asterisk, this is for a test question. You do not have the right to get them out of the vehicle at this point. Just because they were swerving, remember that was phase one. You have a right to pull them over. Now the personal contact is you have to back up what you think is happening here. You know, you thought that they were drunk. Now you have to back it up. Personal contact. When you walk up to the door, I want you to remember this term, divided attention. Divided attention. Divided attention. You get the idea? It's important. We know based on 50 years of research, when somebody has a CNS depressant, alcohol, when you are drunk, you can't do two things at the same time. When you're drunk, you can't do it. All of these tests that we're going to talk about in the standardized field sobriety test are designed around that idea, that premise, that if we give you two things to do, you're going to screw one of them up, because when you're drunk, you can't focus on both. So remember, when you're approaching the car, that contact, you're looking for divided attention problems. What I want you to be thinking about at the personal contact is all of your senses. This is when your senses come into play. When you walk up to the car, first thing I want you to do as you're walking up, as you're being safe, what do you see? Think about it for a second. If you're that cop walking up to this car, what is it that you see that if you were right, you might see? You might see bloodshot eyes as you approach this person. Their eyes are completely bloodshot. You might see that their clothing is soiled. Many times people that are so drunk that you're seeing them swerving, they've shit their pants, they've pissed their pants. So if you see that they have soiled or they're not wearing clothing, I'm gonna put I'm gonna put in Canvas a video of an officer in Florida that actually is doing his standardized field sobriety test of a girl that's literally in her panties because she doesn't realize she's drunk and didn't know what happened to her pants. Anyway, you're going to be looking for things. Remember, what are you seeing? Fumbling fingers. You're going to be asking them, sir, ma'am, could I see your driver's license? Right after you say that, you go, sir, ma'am, could I also see the registration? Why? Because you know the driver's license is in their wallet. They have to get their wallet out. If you tell them to get the registration, which is in their glove box, two things, same time, they're going to screw one of them up. You're going to be watching what happens when you tell them to do two things. Most of the time, they're going to complete one, forgetting about the one completely. So in your arrest report, you're going to be writing, I asked them 3 times to give me their driver's license and registration. It took me 4 times before they gave me the registration. They kept forgetting about giving me the registration. You're going to also think about, what would you be seeing? Alcohol containers. Start looking. You might see empty beer cans in the back seat, bottles on the floorboard. And it's so easy when you're pulling people over that are drinking in their car. You can see them. I mean, everybody thinks, oh, he's behind me, he can't see. If I see a can that's been going up because I'm following you, and all of a sudden my lights go on and I can see you throwing something down, clearly I can see it on a floorboard that's going to be in my arrest report. Having said that, look for any kind of drugs, drug paraphernalia. Bruises, bumps, and scratches. Many people that are this drunk, they've fallen over, they've tripped. There's been many times I could see people that are bleeding, had no idea that they were even bleeding. So you're going to be looking at it. Okay, so this is things that you're going to be seeing. Again, if you don't have enough, don't have them get out of the vehicle. Now let's go to things that you might hear. What are things that you might hear? Now think about it for a second. The obvious is slurred speech. When somebody's drunk, they're going to start slurring their words. They're not speaking correctly. They're slurring. That's the most obvious. What else might you hear? Again, it's like when we talked about getting search warrants. Don't forget about the obvious. Ask them, sir, ma'am, have you had anything to drink today? They're stupid. Most of them are going to say, yeah. And what do most people say? I've had 2 beers. Okay, write that down. They did admit to drinking. They said 2 beers. We don't care whether or not they're lying. We're just glad that they admitted that they had been drinking. Again, write that down. Inconsistent responses. One of the things that I used to crack up about is when people that were drinking, they lose track of time. So if you go up to the window and you go, sir, ma'am, do you have any idea what time it is? Hell, they left the bar, they thought it was midnight, and it might be 3 a.m. So if they tell you, hey, it's midnight, and it's 3 a.m., write that in your report. Most people don't lose 3 hours. Again, write it down. You'll also, when someone knows they're drunk, they're going to be pretty shitty with you. If they're very abusive, everything they say goes in my report. People that are drunk, when they're motherfucking you and they're saying this and saying that, write it all down in your report. Okay? Write down any unusual statements. I mean, you might ask them, who's the president? And they say John F. Kennedy. Whatever. Write down anything that you hear them say. Okay. When you're talking about hearing things, we talked about the slurring. Be careful with that. Again, there's a lot of different people out there with different dialects, different languages. Many people that are having a diabetic problem, don't confuse the diabetic problem for the slur. Don't be jumping to conclusions. Let's talk about smell. Everybody goes, smell? Well, yeah, what's the most obvious? And I want you to put an asterisk next to this. Don't write down, it smells like alcohol, because I've been beat up on the stand. Alcohol doesn't have a smell. What you want to say is, I could smell alcoholic beverage upon their body. Now, there's a lot of you that don't drink and have never drank. Okay, that's fine. But if you're going to go and you're going to be good at making an arrest, I'm going to make sure you go through this course, and I'm going to take beer and pour it on rags and clothing, because I want you to understand, what does it smell like when a beer is poured? What does it smell like? Because in your report, I want you to write down, I could smell alcoholic beverage upon the person's body. Don't pin yourself down. You don't have to say breath. You don't have to say any particular part. Just say, standing outside the window, I could smell alcoholic beverage coming from the body. Enough said. Another one, and this is an obvious one. All these different things that people spray to mask that scent. You'll see all kinds of air fresheners hanging up in a window. You'll roll up, they'll have Tic Tacs in their mouth. I've rolled up and I've had people having a mouthful. They're frothing with white Tic Tacs. I'm like, why are you eating so many Tic Tacs? Because they're trying to cover up that scent. Write all this stuff down. Don't forget about that, because there's a lot of different things that you could smell, especially when we're talking about other drugs like marijuana. Do you kind of get the idea here? You're building a case, the totality of circumstances. If you've got one or two in each one of these levels, it's pretty strong at that point that you can say, ma'am, sir, I need you to step out of the vehicle, and then we move on to phase 3. You're just trying to build that case. So before we leave here, understand, I want you to have a strong phase 2. And if somebody is legitimately, honestly, if they're legitimately drunk beyond a .08, you're going to have a ton of this shit. They're going to do so much stuff, you could write a novel. You have to be good at notating this. When you get to the academy, you're going to have to understand that they're watching your safety. So I don't want your face to be in a notepad, because you're going to die. They're going to shoot you. They're going to kill you. But you have to be able to go back to your car and remember all of this stuff. The minute, once it's all done, you got to rewrite all of the things that you saw. Don't get caught up with your face writing stuff down at that moment. I want you to be safe. That's the most important part. When you've got enough, have them get out of the vehicle. We'll talk about phase 3 next time. This is when it gets complicated, if it's not complicated enough. Phase 3 is ultimately when they come out and see if you're actually right and they were under the influence of something in their system. See you next time.